The sterile hum of alien machinery filled the medical bay as shimmering lights flickered across glass-like walls. The air smelled faintly of ozone, charged with the essence of technologies far beyond human comprehension. Sleek, multi-limbed beings with translucent skin and elongated eyes moved gracefully between diagnostic pods, their movements synchronized with the rhythmic beeps of advanced monitoring systems. This was the most sophisticated hospital in the Zern Prime sector, known for saving countless lives across the galaxy. But today they had failed. Captain Jack Morgan lay motionless on a floating examination platform, his body battered and scarred from an interstellar skirmish that had nearly torn his starship apart. His breath had ceased hours ago, at least by the standards of the alien medics who now hovered over him, their diagnostic tendrils glowing with bioelectric pulses. The chief medic, a towering figure with pale, translucent skin that shimmered like liquid glass, waved one of its appendages in a solemn motion. Vital cessation confirmed. Neural activity 0. Cellular decay irreversible. Its voice resonated not through sound, but through a telepathic pulse that echoed in the minds of the nearby medical staff. The human is dead. A murmur of unease rippled through the gathered alien personnel. Death was rare here, a statistical anomaly in a facility capable of regrowing organs and reviving patients from the brink of annihilation. Yet this human, despite their best efforts, had succumbed to injuries that defied even their most advanced techniques. Dr. Wheeler, a senior scientist observing from a raised platform, narrowed his glowing eyes at the readouts hovering in front of him. Curious, he mused, his thoughts sharp and analytical. Human physiology is more resilient than most species. To declare this one dead so quickly seems premature. The chief medic pulsed a response tinged with irritation. We have adhered to all diagnostic protocols. This is conclusive. Wheeler remained unconvinced, but refrained from pushing further. The protocols were clear. When all signs of life ceased, the subject was to be processed and disposed of according to interspecies medical agreements. Still, something about the situation gnawed at him, a whisper of doubt that refused to fade. Outside the observation chamber, a small group of Jacks, crew members, stood in tense silence. Lieutenant Arya Vale, the ship's tactical officer, clenched her fists, her knuckles whitening against the smooth surface of the wall. She had seen Jack survive situations that would have broken lesser men, explosions, zero-gravity combat, and injuries that would leave most beings begging for death. Yet here he was, declared dead by beings who prided themselves on knowing everything about life and death. It doesn't make sense, Arya muttered, her voice thick with defiance. He's not just some fragile diplomat. He's Captain Morgan. Beside her, Engineer Malik Khan shook his head grimly. These aliens might be geniuses, but they don't understand humans. Jack's been through hell before. If anyone can cheat death, it's him. Arya's lips tightened into a thin line. Then we wait. Meanwhile, inside the medical bay, the chief medic initiated the final protocol. Tendrils extended from the ceiling, wrapping around Jack's lifeless form as a field of pale blue light shimmered over his body. The process was designed to disintegrate organic matter painlessly, returning it to its base elements for galactic recycling. Commencing disposal, the medic announced. A sudden surge of static crackled through the chamber, causing diagnostic monitors to flicker wildly. The chief medic paused, its tendrils twitching in confusion. Wheeler's glowing eyes narrowed as he examined the erratic energy readings. Abort the process, Wheeler commanded sharply. The chief medic hesitated. There is no justification. Abort it. Wheeler's telepathic pulse was forceful enough to override protocol. The energy field dissipated with a hiss, and Jack's body remained intact, floating in eerie stillness. Wheeler descended from the observation platform, his elongated limbs moving with uncharacteristic urgency. Something anomalous is occurring, he declared, his thoughts brimming with curiosity. His cellular structure is not behaving as expected. The chief medic's frustration was palpable. It is merely residual neural static. Meaningless noise. Wheeler ignored the protest, focusing intently on the flickering energy patterns surrounding Jack's body. He had studied countless species, but none had ever exhibited this level of post-mortem activity. And then, for the briefest moment, Jack's chest rose. A shallow, almost imperceptible breath escaped his lips. Wheeler's pulse of thought surged with astonishment. Impossible, the chief medic recoiled, its tendrils trembling. No being returns from complete neural cessation. Yet here he was, defying every law of biology the aliens had known. Wheeler turned to the gathered medics, his thoughts resolute. Prepare for immediate reevaluation. We may be witnessing something unprecedented. Outside the chamber, Arya and Malik stood frozen, their conversation halted by the sudden surge of energy that had radiated through the walls. A flicker of hope sparked in Arya's eyes. "You feel that?" Malik whispered. Arya nodded, her voice steadier now. "Jack's not done yet." As the medics scrambled to reassess their findings, the air in the chamber grew tense with anticipation. Wheeler knew this was no longer just a medical anomaly. It was a moment that could reshape their understanding of life itself. Jack Morgan, the human they had declared dead, was about to rewrite the rules, and none of them would ever forget it. The silence in the chamber was thick, broken only by the faint hum of alien diagnostic equipment. Jack Morgan's body floated motionless under a shimmering containment field, his skin pale and marked with scars from countless battles. The air, saturated with sterile efficiency, now carried a strange tension, as though the fabric of certainty itself had been torn. The medics clustered near the perimeter, their translucent forms quivering in disbelief. Wheeler stood closest to the platform, his elongated fingers tapping against a glowing console. His normally analytical thoughts churned with confusion and fascination. Neural cessation confirmed, he murmured to himself, though the evidence on his display contradicted that assessment. A faint, rhythmic signal had returned. A pulse, impossible yet undeniable. Jack's chest heaved suddenly, drawing a shallow breath that echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. The containment field flickered, as if unsure whether it should remain active. Gasps and sharp telepathic pulses rippled among the alien medics, some stepping back in instinctive fear. No being, not even those with regenerative capabilities, returned from such definitive death. Wheeler leaned closer, his eyes glowing brighter with curiosity. "He breathes," he announced, his voice edged with awe. "The human lives." The chief medic recoiled, disbelief radiating from its shimmering form. "This is a breach of natural law. Impossible." Its tendrils trembled as it examined the diagnostic feed. No cellular integrity should remain. Ignoring the protests, Wheeler deactivated the containment field with a flick of his fingers. The blue light dissolved, leaving Jack suspended by nothing but unseen gravity controls. His breathing steadied. Though his eyelids remained closed, his expression locked in a grimace as though still fighting some unseen battle. Wheeler turned sharply toward the medic. "Impossible or not, it is happening. We must adapt." The medic hesitated, but eventually complied, extending its tendrils to stabilize Jack's hovering form. "This is unprecedented," it admitted reluctantly. "We have no protocols for the reanimation of the clinically dead." Wheeler's response was firm. "Then we write new protocols." A jolt of energy surged through Jack's body, his muscles tensing as if gripped by a sudden shock. His head snapped to the side, lips parting in a strangled gasp. And then, slowly, agonizingly, his eyes fluttered open. They were bloodshot and glassy, searching wildly before locking onto Wheeler. For a moment, there was only confusion, a raw, primal disorientation that mirrored the chaos within Jack's own mind. His voice, rough and broken, finally rasped through cracked lips. "Where am I?" Wheeler stepped forward, his tone calm yet commanding. "You are in the Zern Prime Medical Facility. Do you comprehend?" Jack blinked, his mind struggling to bridge the gap between fragmented memories and the alien landscape before him. Pain throbbed through his body, but beneath it was something else, a flicker of awareness, of survival instincts reigniting. I was dead, Jack whispered hoarsely, disbelief mingling with grim acceptance. Yes, Wheeler confirmed. By every measure known to us, you were beyond recovery. And yet here you are. Jack managed a weak, sardonic laugh that devolved into a cough. Guess I've got a habit of disappointing expectations. Wheeler tilted his head, fascinated by the resilience displayed before him. Your biology defies all known parameters. How is this possible? Jack's lips curled into a faint smile despite the ache in his chest. Humans, we're stubborn, the chief medic interjected, its tone sharp with frustration. This defiance of mortality cannot be attributed to mere stubbornness. There must be a biological explanation. Wheeler raised a hand, silencing the medic. Perhaps it is both a combination of biology and willpower beyond our understanding. Jack shifted, testing the strength of his limbs. Pain flared with each movement, but it was pain he welcomed, proof that he was still alive. Memories of the battle flooded back. The ship tearing apart under enemy fire, the shouts of his crew, the searing agony of his injuries. He remembered falling, darkness swallowing him whole. And yet something had pulled him back, something primal and relentless. I'm not done yet, Jack muttered under his breath, the words more for himself than anyone else. Wheeler's keen senses picked up the faint declaration. It would seem not, he remarked, his tone edged with admiration. As the medics reluctantly accepted Jack's inexplicable survival, diagnostic readings continued to stream across their consoles. Readings that made no sense even to the most advanced minds present. Cellular regeneration patterns fluctuated wildly, neural pathways restructured themselves at an accelerated rate, and metabolic processes defied known limits. Wheeler's thoughts raced. This must be documented, he declared. If humans possess such capabilities, it could revolutionize galactic medicine. The chief medic remained skeptical. Or it could be an anomaly, a singular phenomenon with no broader implications. Jack, regaining more of his composure, shot a glare at the medic. Trust me, I'm not some one-in-a-billion freak show. Humans are tougher than you think. Wheeler regarded him thoughtfully. Perhaps Earth and its people warrant further study. Jack grunted as he swung his legs off the platform, ignoring the protests of his protesting muscles. You want to study humans? Start by understanding this. When we go down, we get back up. Wheeler inclined his head. A philosophy as intriguing as your biology. Jack's gaze hardened. It's not just a philosophy. It's survival. The chamber fell into a contemplative silence, the weight of what had transpired sinking into the minds of everyone present. Jack Morgan, the human they had declared dead, was standing once more, a living testament to a resilience no alien could have predicted. Wheeler watched as Jack steadied himself, resolve etched into every line of his face. The scientist knew that what had just occurred was only the beginning. Questions demanded answers. Mysteries awaited unraveling, and this human, this impossible survivor, was now the key to unlocking secrets beyond imagination. For Jack, however, the immediate concern was simple: getting back to his crew and finishing what had been started. He had cheated death, but the fight was far from over, and something told him the galaxy wasn't ready for what came next. The tension in the research chamber was palpable, thick with the weight of unanswered questions. Banks of holographic monitors displayed shifting patterns of Jack Morgan's biological data. Each pulse and fluctuation defined the understanding of Zern Prime's most advanced scientists. Vibrant streams of glowing symbols hovered in the air, representations of incomprehensible processes within Jack's body. Despite the overwhelming evidence of his recovery, none of it made sense. Dr. Wheeler stood at the center of the room, his form rigid with concentration. His elongated fingers danced across a control panel, shifting through layers of molecular data in a desperate search for clarity. Tendrils of frustration radiated from the alien medics surrounding him, their minds grappling with concepts that refused to fit within their carefully structured medical paradigms. This is impossible, The chief medic intoned for what felt like the 100th time, its shimmering skin darkening with irritation. Neural pathways were formed. Cellular degradation halted. The human should not be alive, let alone functioning at this capacity. Wheeler's voice was measured, though beneath it was a flicker of growing excitement. And yet he is. Our failure is not his anomaly, but our ignorance. Jack, leaning against the diagnostic table with a faint smirk, watched the debate unfold with bemused detachment. His bruises had already faded to faint shadows, and the ache in his limbs had diminished to a dull throb. Whatever miraculous force had pulled him back from the brink of death, it wasn't done with him yet. "You folks sure like saying impossible a lot," Jack remarked dryly, crossing his arms over his chest. The chief medic's tendrils quivered in annoyance. "It is not a term we use lightly, human." Jack shrugged. "Funny. Back on Earth, we just call it Tuesday." Wheeler suppressed a pulse of amusement. He had spent enough time studying human psychology to recognize their penchant for humor in the face of adversity. It was a coping mechanism as much as it was a survival trait, and Jack Morgan embodied both qualities to a staggering degree. "I would like to hear your perspective," Wheeler said, turning to Jack. "You claim that humans possess a capacity for resilience beyond what we have observed in other species. Can you elaborate?" Jack's expression grew thoughtful. "You ever hear of adrenaline?" Wheeler's eyes glowed faintly as he accessed his internal databanks. "A biochemical compound released during moments of extreme stress, enhancing physical capabilities temporarily. We have noted its presence in human physiology, but did not consider it particularly remarkable." Jack chuckled. "That's because you haven't seen what it can really do. When things go south, when survival's on the line, our bodies kick into overdrive. Faster reflexes, sharper senses, pain gets dulled. And sometimes, when it seems like all hope is gone, we just keep going." The chief medic scoffed. "Biochemical responses cannot explain cellular regeneration on this scale." "Maybe not," Jack conceded, "but it's not just biology. It's in our heads, too. We don't quit. You can knock us down 100 times, but we'll get back up 101. That's just how we're wired." Wheeler tilted his head, intrigued. "A psychological imperative intertwined with biological responses. Fascinating." He gestured toward the hovering data streams. "Yet this resilience appears to have manifested at a molecular level within you. Your cells not only survived, but adapted." Jack's brow furrowed. "Adapted how?" Wheeler manipulated the holographic interface, isolating a section of Jack's genetic code. "Your cellular structures exhibit properties akin to accelerated healing, though without the typical metabolic cost. It's as though your body rewrote its own survival parameters." "Never knew I was that talented," Jack quipped, though a hint of unease flickered in his eyes. Wheeler's tone grew solemn. "This phenomenon is unprecedented, even among regenerative species. If it can be understood and replicated, it could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy." The chief medic, still skeptical, interjected. "Or it could be an anomaly unique to this individual. We cannot assume broader applications from a singular event." Wheeler's gaze remained fixed on Jack. "Perhaps. But anomalies are often where breakthroughs begin." Jack pushed off the table, his posture steady despite the surreal nature of the conversation. "Look, Doc, I appreciate the curiosity, but I'm not interested in becoming some lab rat. I've got a crew waiting for me, and a galaxy that's not exactly friendly right now." Wheeler inclined his head. "I understand your reluctance. However, you must realize the significance of what has occurred here. Your survival challenges the very foundations of our understanding." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I get it. But I didn't come back from the dead just to sit around and get poked and prodded. I've got work to do." Wheeler considered this for a moment before nodding. "Very well. But should you experience any complications, I urge you to return." Jack smirked. "If I start glowing or sprouting extra limbs, you'll be the first to know." The tension in the room eased slightly, though the weight of unanswered questions lingered. Vila knew this was far from over. Jack Morgan's inexplicable survival was a puzzle that demanded solving, not just for the advancement of science, but for the survival of countless beings across the galaxy. As Jack made his way toward the exit, Wheeler watched him go with a mixture of respect and curiosity. The human had defied death itself, and something told Wheeler that this was only the beginning. The universe had just been reminded of humanity's greatest strength, not their technology nor their intelligence, but their relentless refusal to surrender. And Wheeler, for all his knowledge, could not help but wonder what other impossible feats lay ahead. The starship's landing bay hummed with activity as maintenance crews moved like clockwork, repairing battle scars left by the recent skirmish. The faint tang of ozone and metal lingered in the air, blending with the steady thrum of machinery. Jack Morgan stepped down from the transport ramp, his boots striking the deck with a purposeful rhythm. The familiar weight of the ship settled around him, grounding him after the surreal events on Zern Prime. Lieutenant Aria Vale was waiting near the edge of the bay, her sharp gaze softening when she saw him. She broke into a brisk stride, stopping just short of throwing decorum aside and pulling him into a hug. Instead, she settled for a relieved smile. "You look like hell," she said, folding her arms. Jack smirked. "Nice to see you too, Aria." Her eyes flickered with concern despite the banter. "They said you were gone. Declared dead. I thought I'd lost you." "Yeah," Jack said quietly, the weight of those words settling between them. "So did I." The memory of his resurrection lingered at the edges of his thoughts, a strange blur of light, pain, and impossible recovery. He still couldn't fully explain it, but right now, that didn't matter. He was alive, and his crew needed him. Malik Khan, the ship's chief engineer, jogged over with grease-streaked hands and a wide grin. "Captain Lazarus returns," he announced theatrically. "I knew you were too stubborn to stay dead." Jack snorted. "If that's what they're calling me now, I might need a new business card." Malik's grin widened. "Glad to have you back, sir." "Good to be back," Jack replied, the sincerity clear in his voice. As they made their way toward the command deck, the ship vibrated beneath their feet, a living entity that mirrored the resolve of its crew. Jack could feel the eyes of passing officers and technicians, some filled with disbelief, others with admiration. The story of his return had spread faster than any official report, transforming into a legend that would likely follow him for the rest of his life. In the briefing room, holographic displays flickered with tactical readouts. Aria and Malik took their seats, their faces growing serious as Jack activated the central console. "We've got work to do," Jack began, his voice steady. "The enemy knows we're still kicking, and they won't sit idle for long. I want this ship battle-ready, within 72 hours. Malik nodded. "We're already on it, Captain. Engines are patched, shields are recalibrating, and weapon systems are at 80%. We'll be at full strength by your deadline." Jack turned to Aria. "What about recon?" "We've tracked enemy movements to the Karen Expanse," she reported. "They're regrouping, likely planning a counterstrike." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we hit them first." There was no hesitation, no second-guessing. The crew had seen him face death and come back stronger. If anything, their faith in him had only deepened. But beneath Jack's steely resolve lay an unease he couldn't shake. His survival had defied every natural law he knew. What if there was a cost he hadn't yet paid? Later, when the briefing concluded and the room emptied, Jack found himself alone with Aria. She studied him carefully, her perceptive gaze cutting through his defenses. "You're not telling me everything," she said softly. Jack exhaled slowly. "There's not much to tell. 1 minute I was gone. The next I wasn't. That's not normal, Jack." "I know," he admitted. "The aliens couldn't explain it either. Wheeler called it unprecedented. I call it a headache." Aria frowned. "And you're just going to brush it off." Jack met her gaze evenly. "I don't have the luxury of sitting around and wondering why I'm still breathing. We've got a fight coming, and my job is to make sure we win it." She nodded reluctantly. Just don't forget you're human, Jack. Even if you came back from the dead, you're not invincible. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Trust me, I'm painfully aware. Despite the levity, her words lingered. Jack knew she was right. Whatever force had saved him wasn't something to be ignored. But that was a mystery for another time. Right now, his crew needed a leader, not a man lost in questions without answers. As the ship prepared for its next mission, Jack stood on the observation deck, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. The universe stretched endlessly before him, filled with dangers and wonders alike. He'd faced death and walked away, but the galaxy had a way of testing even the most stubborn souls. Wheeler's parting words echoed in his mind. Your survival challenges the very foundations of our understanding. Jack clenched his fists, a fierce determination burning in his chest. Whatever had happened on Zern Prime, whatever mysteries remained, he would face them head-on. That was a human way. Because no matter how many times the universe tried to break him, Jack Morgan would always get back up,